and this you is not defined by fear, by insecurities, or by the past traumas that they have experienced. There is a version of you available in God that God wants to release in the earth. God wants to call out the version of you that does not need to shrink for you to fit into a room. He wants you to become all that He has always known. To step out from what we think has defined our lives and step into what God says about us. Welcome to Honest and Freedom Podcast. This is me, Panashe, your host, and I'm so excited to be here for, I think it's episode 5, but hey, I'm excited about what we're going to talk about today. We are going to get into identity through the lens of Jacob from the Bible. I have taken some time studying the story of Jacob and Esau, and I love the fact that God highlighted something about identity through those scriptures that I want to highlight with you. And this really applies for you if you are in any area of your life. You're a professional, you're in ministry, you're in your business, you're a creative. You need to know what God says about you, because identity really is the essence of who we are. You know, I was talking to one of my friends and we came to the realization that what we believe about ourselves shape our realities and shapes our future. Eventually, it shapes our identities. So I want you to think about it. What is your identity? Who gives you an identity? Because I am a firm believer that God is the first person to give any human being identity. If your identity does not flow from God, it will flow from the opinions of people. It will flow from the productivity of your work. It will flow from every other thing. And all those things are fickle. They change. They give you a sense of a you that is not real. But anyway, we'll get into it because we are talking about Jacob. And I want to invite you to something, because we are starting something new this month of March. We are going to be doing Fruitful Mind March. So we have named the month of March Fruitful Mind March because we want to use it as a month where we tear down the thoughts, the mindsets that are limiting, breaking the cycles of our minds in order for us to step into the fullness of what God says about us. And it's so amazing that we are starting with this podcast on identity, because it's going to break us out and break us into what God desires for us to walk into. I chose the month of March because most of the times when you start the month of January, you are writing down your goals, you're excited to pursue them. In February, you're still kind of trying to be consistent and show up. But by the end of February, many people are now laid back in pursuing their goals, in pursuing the vision, in following what the Lord told them to do. Sometimes they have realized that, oh, I lack in this area. I don't have these resources. I don't have this kind of mindset. I don't have the connections and all of those things. And because of that, they step out of doing what God has ordained for them to do. And so Fruitful Mind March is for you if you know you have got a vision from the Lord, you've got a dream from the Lord, you have something that you know must manifest in the earth through the wisdom of God, but you are in a place where you're like, I don't think I have what it takes. I don't think I'm good enough. That's for you. We want you to be a part of it. I want you to join the community on Instagram, on TikTok, because that is where all the rules about the month of what we are going to be doing are going to be there. And you're going to be getting some insights every single day about how to walk through that journey of realizing certain patterns that have limited you and knowing how to now step out of those limitations and become a person of sustainable impact. But anyway, this is just a side note. So make sure you are on the community's pages, okay? Because I want you to be on it. But today we are talking about identity through the lens of Jacob's life, okay? Jacob is an interesting character because when he is born, we realize that his mother is told about 2 nations that are in her womb, and Jacob is said to be the younger whom the older would serve, right? And so there's such a great destiny upon Jacob. God has already given him an identity. And we know that it's written in the Bible that God says Jacob he loved, but Esau he hated. This doesn't mean that God had like hatred, as in the emotion of hatred that we have in reality. It was not that kind of hatred. It was just that God had something that was specific, that was ordained for Jacob to walk into, that was different from Esau. So it means that in the scheme of things, in God's divine will, Jacob had a greater part to play than Esau did. But that's very interesting because that shows that God had chosen him, God had anointed him, God saw him as special. This means that all of these things were an identity that God gave him in his mother's womb before he came into the earth. If we know about Jeremiah, we know Jeremiah speaks about how God says, I knew you before you were formed in your mother's womb. This highlights the issue that God has an identity that he knows about us that existed in the realm of the spirit before we were born and we became. But one of the most interesting things that we need to understand about identity is God may give us an identity that is specific about our lives. But what happens is you come into a world that is filled with humanity, that is filled with people with flaws, with imperfections. And because of that, you experience certain things in life that can transform or change the core of that identity. I think that one of the most important things we need to understand is that certain life experiences have a way of transforming and changing what we know about ourselves, what is supposed to be about ourselves. This is why you find people start calling themselves, I am unworthy, I'm inferior, I'm insignificant, useless, all of those kind of emotions and thoughts and words. They stem from experiences you've had with people all around you. So it's not what God says about you, but because you come into a world that is filled with imperfect people and you experience certain things, they change what is known about you in the heavens. So most of the times what you say about yourself or what you believe about yourself is not by accident. You probably experienced something that changed your perception. And one of the most important things you need to do is finding healing from that place in order for you to be effective in the will of God and what He wants to do with your life. And sometimes as a professional, as a businessman, as a businesswoman, as a creative, you can find yourself second guessing yourself and doubtful about your abilities because most of the times it comes from what has been said about you. I had something that Dr. V. Kativu said, and one of the things that she said is that when she was, I think in primary or high school, there's a teacher that told her that she wouldn't go far. I don't remember the specific words that were used, but it were words that were kind of trying to demean her and try to make her feel like there's nothing great that would come out of her life. But she managed to step out of that identity that was given to her, because each word, all the words that people speak into your life, they shape your identity somehow. It's so interesting how she managed to fight that mindset that was put in her by that teacher to say that she would not amount to anything. As she fought through that mindset and she began to behold the true identity of who she is, that she is meant for more and she can do more. And today we can see that she has done more than what probably that teacher would have imagined or would have ever thought would come out of their life. And so that is very interesting, that most people are limited by what has been said to them. And many people are okay with walking with an inauthentic version of themselves because you think that if you walk with a version of yourself that is copying other people and acting like other people, it would make you acceptable. It would make you received by people. But what you don't know is you're trading your uniqueness and capabilities at the altar of comparison or at the altar of inauthenticity. And what you need to do is to step out of that inauthentic mindset and begin to believe in yourself that your uniqueness is valuable and what you have to offer might be different from how people function or how other people do it, but it's very essential because there are people that are waiting for you and the nature of who you are. Organizations that want to work with the unique mindset that you have, they're excited to receive the ideas that you have, but you are scared to express them because you are scared to reveal the glory that is in you because you think that if I share these ideas, people are going to reject me. But I believe that it's very important that you position yourself in a place where you can be able to express yourself in the fullness of who you are and not having to shrink yourself to fit certain rooms, because I think many professionals do that. They get into workplaces and they think, oh my God, I don't think my ideas and my abilities will be received in this place. So they shrink to look like everybody else. But maybe you don't know that the moment that you could arise and speak that idea that is what the organization needs. Everybody is like a spice. Each and every individual is a spice. So you get into an organization, you get into a company, you start a business and you have people that you're working with. Each and every person that is coming to contribute something is like a spice. And that spice is being made into a perfect oxtail meal in such a way that it's so tasty. But if you hide your spice, then the entire organization is probably missing out on something powerful that would come out of you. When we talk about Jacob, he is born into an environment that challenges his divine identity because he's his mother's favorite, but he's not his father's favorite. The father's favorite is Esau, and he's not the father's favorite. I feel like that is very interesting because we need to understand how important having a father relationship for guys is. You know, many boys really love that intimate relationship with their fathers because that is where they learn masculinity, how to navigate life, how to be trained to be a man. And so it means that each and every time Isaac had something to do, he would take Esau with him because Esau seemed to have many interests that aligned with his father than Jacob did. So it means that he experienced a lot with his dad than Jacob did. And I believe that that could have been the start of identity cracks in the life of Jacob. He was in a place where he wanted intimate relationship with his dad. He wanted that closeness. He wanted that alignment with him, but he wasn't getting it. He wasn't getting that. And he was seeing that Esau kept getting the favors, kept getting the preferential treatment instead of him. And that destroys the identity of a child, because there's a lack of affection from a parent, interpret it as if children do not interpret it as preference, but what they do is they interpret it as worth. So they think that because I don't get this kind of preference, attention, I don't get the affection, it means that I am not worthy of your love, I'm not worthy to be seen. So it kind of begins to train them to do a performative kind of love, because now they believe in the idea that I have to act, I have to do this and that in order for me to be loved. That is what we see in a lot of people that grew up in a place where you have to bring the best report card. If your report card is bad, you're not loved. If your report card is good, you receive affection. All of that trains a child that they have to perform for love. And I believe that that is exactly what started to happen in the life of Jacob, because when we see him trade the bowl of soup for the birthright of Esau, I don't think the main issue was the birthright. I don't think it was that he wanted the birthright. I think that the main thing that was present in that moment was he wanted intimacy with his father. So he believed that if I take something that Esau has that is so special, maybe somehow my dad would see me. So it was a yearning to be seen, to be heard, to be loved, to be held, which is a human need for each and every individual. Everybody wants to feel that. Everybody wants to feel like they belong. If they don't feel like they belong, it changes and transforms who they are. And these are experiences of every human being that we can have that transforms our identity and what we believe about ourselves, and changes the perspective of our lives and how we are walking through in the will of God for our lives, and how we walk even in our professional spaces. So we need to come back to realization that I need to change my identity. I need to allow the Lord to begin to work on me, because if he does not, I walk with this version of myself that I cannot understand, a version of myself that I do not want to be, but a version of myself I am stuck in and do not know how to get out. And that requires the work of God to pull you out from that place in order for you to walk in the fullness of what he knows. And that is exactly what we see in the life of Jacob. So Jacob, in a bid to prove himself, obviously there were so many mistakes that happened. In as much as everything that was happening in Jacob worked together for his good in the perfect will of God, we can still see that it was something that was heartbreaking, because after he got the blessing from his father, Esau began to hate him. Esau wanted to kill him. So this means that now in his identity, he's somebody who lives on a survival mode, okay? He is living from a place of, I just do things to survive. So he flees to Laban's house. In Laban's house, again, we begin to see that he is still operating from that survival mindset. He is living in a place where still he does not know the knowledge of who he is. Now he's carrying the blessing he was given by his father, a blessing that was ordained from the beginning of time. But he carries that identity. It's known in the heavens. It's supposed to be on him, but he does not have a revelation of it. And so most times we operate without a revelation of who we are. We operate without an understanding of what we carry. And that is exactly what was happening with Jacob. He could not fathom what was on him. And because he didn't know what was on him, Laban took advantage of that, because he knew by divination that he was prospering because of Jacob's presence in his household. So he made sure Jacob kept working and working. This is why he made sure that he worked for Leah for 7 years. And after that, he had to work for Rachel for another 7 years. And after that, he kept working for Laban. You are carrying the blessing, you keep living in a place of survival because you do not know what you carry. And that is what happens when you don't know what your identity is, when you don't know who you are in Christ, when you do not know what has been placed on you by God. When people notice that, they will tremble on you, okay? They will walk over you, they will do whatever they can, and they will keep taking from you and destroying you at the same time, not even feeling sorry for you, because you have no knowledge of who you are. So it's up to you now to step out from that place of lack of knowledge of what you have and what you carry and who you are, and begin to walk into the fullness. Lack of identity is a snare that keeps people bound in places where they are not supposed to be in. And I think that that is so interesting, because it makes me think about any professional who's probably in a workplace and they are bound in that place and they don't want to express themselves, or maybe they try to express themselves and try to express their brilliance, but their brilliance was shut down. Well, if people shut you down, how about you get on LinkedIn and show people what you can do, okay? Not not to actually shut yourself down completely and think that, oh, I'm so invisible, but how about you put yourself on LinkedIn? That is maybe the place where you will get more opportunities from people. How about you start creating content that is in alignment with the things that you love to do, and your brilliance can be seen by people because there's somebody who's looking for that brilliance. You don't have to shut it down because people have shut you down. People may shut you down because they recognize your brilliance, and because of that, it kind of rattles them and makes them feel inferior. And because of that, they try to close you down so that you do not shine. So you find ways to shine. You step out and begin to say, Lord, teach me new strategies in order for me to express my giftings and my abilities so that I can be seen in my glory and the glory that you have made me to walk in. I always think about even creatives and business people. You just need to find a way to be visible. One of the things one of my uncles always says is whenever you get into a place and you do business or you're creative, people there, when you leave that place, they should know what you do. You should have made yourself visible. You should have expressed what you do. You should have shared your ideas and everything. They should know that if they are looking for someone who does this, they can come to you. And that was so interesting because I used to be someone who was very shy and felt like I'm so insignificant. I don't have what it takes and all of that. So I was scared to highlight that, oh, hey, this is what I do. Or I felt like, oh, what I do is not that really important. And so I shied away from being expressive about what I do and what I love. But it also just keeps you in a place where you are broke and you don't have anybody who is interested in what you do because you are not very confident in yourself and in your uniqueness and what you offer and the value that you bring to the room. So it's important to understand your value because that's what Jacob didn't have. He didn't understand the value on his life. In as much as he had the blessing, he didn't understand the value that he had with that blessing. Therefore, Laban took advantage of that and he kept on trampling on him and making him work and work and work. Yet, maybe if he knew what he had, it would have been easier when Laban was trying to force him to stay in that household and do all of those things. Maybe in that place he could have stood up for himself because he knew, I am the blessing, you are benefiting from me, I would rather we do things like this. He would renegotiate the plans and the ideas that Laban was giving because he understood his value. So it's important to understand your value as a person, and that comes from knowing your identity. Without identity, you cannot find what value you carry in any room that you enter. If you do not see yourself as anointed, as chosen, as called, and as skilled, as talented, other people will see it and they will take advantage of that. And you will keep thinking you have nothing to offer, yet you do. It's just that you do not know it. And you need to find it and find that uniqueness that you have and find that identity that you have. Because once you walk in the fullness of it, it transforms the trajectory of your entire life. The mercy of God is what helps you to shift your identity. You cannot really shift it on your own strength. I know that also the Word of God talks about how renewal of the mind by the studying of the Word and knowing the Word, that is what renews our mind. But you need to understand that it's also by the help of the Spirit. If you're not helped by the Holy Spirit, you will never find who you are. You will never be able to discern who you are and walk fully in that mindset. Your identity is not supposed to be rooted in trauma. It's not built by past experiences. It's not built by the opinions of people. It's not built by any other thing that you may think of. It's built by God. What does God say about you? Because what He says is the final authority. Live for the audience of one. In my professional space, in my business, in my creative, in my writing, in whatever thing that I do, I live for the audience of one. And from there, I can be able to be impactful in my work because I have obtained something and knowledge of myself that is so valuable that from there, I can produce with confidence that I've got this. And in as much as other people may not see it, there's just one person who needs to see it. And from there, it changes my life. It's not true that because your teacher said you would amount to nothing, you will actually amount to nothing. That is a lie. Also not true that you are invisible and inferior because people bullied you in school. That's a lie. The fact that you were abandoned and rejected in a certain relationship does not mean that you will always live a life where you are hurt and you won't have healthy relationships. That is a lie. Your identity is also very important in relationships because people are very good at manipulating people, looking at your weaknesses and stifling you from that weakness. If you do not want people to manipulate you, to look down on you in relationships, what is your identity? What do you believe about yourself? How confident are you in you? Because if you're not confident in yourself, you're not confident in what God says about you, people will see it. I believe that this also stems from how a lot of people tolerate abuse when they are in adult relationships. They tolerate certain physical abuse and even emotional abuse because in their mind, they don't have an understanding of their value. And so they think that whatever they get from there is what they deserve because they don't believe or they don't see anything valuable about themselves. I had that experience in my life where I was in a relationship that was emotionally nerve-wracking. There was emotional abuse and I was okay with it. I knew that it was bad, but I was still in a place where I'm going to stay here because that's all that I can get. This is the best that could ever happen for me. Yet it's a lie because I didn't have the grasp of an understanding of what is it, who am I, and what is my identity. The moment I began to know my identity in Christ, that is when I knew I cannot tolerate this kind of treatment because this is not how I'm supposed to be treated. This is not how I'm supposed to be loved. So you need to find that, because if you do not find that, you will keep tolerating and taking treatment that will destroy your self-esteem, your self-worth. They're emotionally or physically abusing you. Now you are in a place where sometimes when you want to produce something, you want to do a creative idea, they try to silence you. And when you're silenced, you're okay with it. They become the ones that have the final say in what you can do, which is not supposed to be the reality. The reality is only God has to have the final say. So now you tell yourself that I can't do this. I can't fall in love with people like this because I don't deserve it. I'm not that beautiful. I'm not that talented. I'm not that good enough. You think that you cannot do a certain business. You think that you cannot, show yourself in with confidence and boldness in the boardroom because you think that, oh, people will now look at me and they will criticize me or they will look down on me, which is not true. You just need to step out of the minds of other people, step out of the mindset that is destroying you in order for you to walk in the fullness of the identity that is available in you, for you in God. When God begins to reshape your identity, he does not need the permission of your past. He does not need the permission of the people that spoke crazy things about you. God knows how to actually bring out the version of you that he knows in the best way possible. He also doesn't have to negotiate with your past. He doesn't negotiate with your insecurities. When our identity is skewed, we cannot actually walk out in the fullness of who he wants us to be or have the sustainable impact he wants us to have in certain areas of our lives. We see Jacob, God had to change his identity. I believe that the day that Jacob had the warfare with an angel, or when he had the war with the Lord, when he had the fight with the Lord, that was the construction zone of the fullness of who he is. I believe that God wanted to break him out of survival. God wanted to break him out from being a fighter. For someone who kept fighting his way through life, that is all he knew. He knew how to fight his way through life. That is all he understood, even from the name that he was given. But we understand that when the Lord changed his identity to Israel, which means that the Lord prevails, God was now leading him into a place where God was saying, I will prevail through you. It's time for you to rest, not to fight, but for me to now prevail through you and manifest myself through you. Okay, God wanted him to be a father to 12 tribes of Israel, and he could not walk in the fullness of that and understand his role in that if God had not broken down his old mindsets of the things that he had experienced in his past. The small-mindedness that you can have because of family background, the schools you went to, the experiences you had, the friends that you had, all of that, God desires to break you free, to break you out from that, because when he breaks you out from that, now you can behold what he wants to do with your life. I believe that God allowed the journey of him coming back to his brother Esau to be a journey that was filled with discomfort because he wanted to stretch him out. He wanted Jacob to really see that there was more to him than what he was experiencing. When God wants to change our identity, we can get into a place where we are wrestling with him, wrestling with God in what he's saying we are supposed to walk into. It's a tension between who you were and who you are becoming. And that middle place, God allows certain discomforts to happen in our lives so that he can begin to work his will in us and through us and help us now to move in the direction of who he wants us to become. God also disrupts the identity of us that is rooted in protection, because protection is not purpose. And so most of the times we protect ourselves. You don't speak up because you want to protect yourself. You don't show your abilities or your gifts because you want to protect yourself. You want to live in a place of a comfort zone. I shared recently that most of the times what we call the comfort zone is really where we want to mitigate any possibility of rejection, people looking down on us or being criticized. And therefore we form this bubble where we live in, which is like the comfort zone, where we try to hide what we do, because that is where we believe we are safe. But safety is not really the truth of who you are. You need to question, this bubble that I created still keeping me safe, or it's now restricting me? Because most of the times you probably have these visions and these dreams where you're seeing yourself doing certain things, but in your reality you can't walk into it because you have caused yourself to stay in that place of being limited, because that is all you believe about yourself. But sometimes you need to ask yourself, how then do I build a new system that can help me to thrive in a new season? When you want God to work out impact through your life, there is a certain wall of identity that he has to break down. It's a journey, that's a process of pain, that's a process of pulling, that's a process of taking away certain things, taking away certain mindsets, taking away what you have. Because sometimes when it's so normal to you, it's the norm of your life, it's familiar, so it's something that you are so accustomed to, and God begins to shake that and break that. And I feel like that is an uncomfortable place to be in. But when you find yourself in a place where you are wrestling for the old you need to understand, do I still need to hold on to this old me, or do I need to submit myself and surrender into the new person that he intends to make, and submit myself and say, work through me and work your best work to me in such a way that I can be able to be trusted with the more of the effectiveness of my life in whatever area of expertise that I'm walking. And so you need to be willing to let go of what you've known so you can walk into what seems unknown, but what is known by God. This brings me to a place where I think about when I started this podcast. I was also in a place where I'm like, God, I don't have what it takes. There are certain things that I do not have. I felt insignificant. I didn't feel like I have value to offer. I didn't feel like I have the things that other people do have. And I questioned myself a lot. And I believe that something that God allowed in my life was allowing certain things that I wanted to work at a particular time to not work, so that I live in that place of discomfort, and that discomfort would push me into the version of me he knows. Because if there was no discomfort, if I had everything figured out that I wanted in my life, I don't think I'll be doing this. I'll probably be enjoying my life and doing whatever, because I'm like, this demands a version of me that I don't think I have. This demands a version of me that is not afraid, a version of me that is not worried about the criticism of people, that is not worried about, oh, what will people think about me. This is a version of me that is foreign to me, and I don't think I want to partake in that. But God allowed it and allowed the discomfort, because he knew that once you step out in that discomfort, I will call out the version of you I know that heaven knows that you have not met. But if you only just step out of that uncomfortable place and begin to walk out what I have for you, you will begin to understand why all of the other things didn't work out, because I wanted to call you out into the identity I know in me, in such a way that when you are rooted in the identity of God, every other opposition that could come against you does not have to take you out, does not have to limit you, because you already have something weightier that defines you, and it's what God says. So I'm very confident in that discomfort is an invitation for you to walk out of the version of you that pain and sorrow and problems and experiences of life created, into the version of you that purpose requires. He builds you up in a foundation that is not fractured, in a foundation that is fresh, in a foundation that is new, because he knows that what he wants to do with you, if it's a thing of impact, you cannot do impact without identity, because anything can shake you. Experiences, people, everything will shake you. But if they shake you, are you going to be shakeable? No, you won't be shakeable if you have your identity rooted in God, because he is the ultimate truth of our life. God will not really release impact to anyone whose identity is still fractured. You will not release greatness to somebody who still has his identity fragmented in different places, and their soul is fragmented, because he recognizes that it will only destroy you than it would influence people. He doesn't want you to step into a future so beautiful with a structure that cannot sustain the glory that he wants to release to you. identity is rooted in revelation. Once you get the revelation of what God says about you, that is what transforms your identity. Without revelation, you can't walk out what he knows and what he says concerning you. It requires surrender. It requires God to strip you of what you know. It requires God to work through you. It requires God to just bring out that best version of you that he knows. I think that when we look at Esther's life, the moment Mordecai says that maybe you were born for such a time as this, it challenged her to walk in the identity God held. It challenged her to God also places people in our lives that help us and teach us to know that our responsibilities, our experiences, the trauma that we experience, all those things are not meant to define who we are. They're not meant to teach us about ourselves. What teaches us about ourselves is what God says. And I think that is the most powerful thing. So as we step into Fruitful Mind March, I just wanted to share this to say that be really alert in finding your identity. If you didn't know what your identity is, you don't know who you are, you don't understand who you are, this is the month where you begin to find that in God, where you begin to spend time with him, knowing the word, allowing him to redefine you, allowing him to bring discomfort in your life that transforms what you believe about yourself. Because as you step into what he knows, you will begin to be a person we all cannot recognize, a person who we all will say, how did this happen? How did they become this great? It's because they obtained something that is known by God, and now they can be effective and impactful in their businesses, in their ideas, in their giftings, because they were able to behold a uniqueness that they carry and knew that this uniqueness is valuable. If you don't see value in what you do, if you don't see value in who you are, other people will not see it. You need to stand your ground and say, this is precious, this is the will of God for me, this is what he ordained for me, I walk in it, I am impactful, I am unique, and this is what I'm going to do. When you treat yourself with that much value, other people will begin to see the value in what you do. If you do not see value in it, other people will still tremble in it. They will not see anything beautiful about it, and you don't have to blame them, you don't have to be angry at them, because it's not their fault. You don't see it, and so they cannot see it. So you need to see it first, you need to believe it first, you need to share it first, you need to highlight it first, that this is what I carry, this is my value, this is what I bring, and this is who I am. And be confident in it, because when you do, other people can be able to treat it the same way. But anyway, this is what I have for you for today. I hope that this was an insightful episode for you, and I cannot wait to see you for Fruitful Mind March, because we are going to be doing a lot of mind work in order for us to be successful, fruitful, and highly great throughout this entire year. We learn about our patterns, we learn about our thinking patterns, how we can change, who we can become, how we can be better in order for us to pursue the goals, the vision, the plans that God has for us, and for us to be very impactful women in the world, because I believe that the call of God is on women to arise, and I want you to know that he wants to do great things through you, in and through you. And so this is your season to arise, and are you going to step into the fullness of what he knows about you and look into it with fullness and joy. Anyway, this is what I have today, and I hope that I'll see you guys in the next episode. But yay, make sure that you're following Knowledge and Freedom Podcast. It's also available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and Amazon Music. So I cannot wait to chat with you on any other platform.